How's it going, everyone? Got a bunch to go over in this video. It looks like Sony and PlayStation may be working on a pretty cool feature, at least indicated by a new Sony patent. We'll talk all about that. A lot of rumblings around Marvel's Wolverine and potentially Ben Studios' new IP. It looks like a lot of people believe Wolverine is set for a 2024 release. I would take it very much with a grain of salt for now, but we'll talk about it since it's really making the rounds right now. And a bit of an update on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as far as its performance. If you're familiar with Final Fantasy VII Remake on PlayStation 5, very similar to that. We'll talk that at the end of this video, but as noted on Insider Gaming, a new Sony patent is noting that it'll let you replay a game from any point possible. In a new patent filed by Sony earlier this month, it was revealed that they are planning to bring a new feature that allows users to cherry pick exact moments from which they can replay a game. It's a feature that would allow you to backtrack through a campaign. I think the biggest element that this would be effective is to get missable trophies. I really think that could be something fantastic, and a lot of games do have things like chapter select, but a lot of games also don't have stuff like that, and to be able to go back to any point, now obviously I think it would be a little bit of a case-by-case basis. A developer would probably have to verify it and make sure that their game would be compatible with such feature, but if they implement the feature, then they could just say, hey, going forward you need to have the capabilities to allow the utilization of the feature. At least that's what I would think. Obviously, again, when you look at a lot of games these days, as far as replaying a game so you can skip a certain section, there are literally games now, like Last of Us Part 1 has a feature where if you're on a puzzle, you could straight up like click a button and then skip the entirety of that puzzle, which I think is wild to me, but you know, it is what it is. In the flow put forward in the Sony document, which was shared by Xputer, it was revealed that it'll work something like this. Again, I'll leave a link to Insider Gaming in the description box below. As the user plays their game, information regarding media content will be stored with trigger points being associated with specific data sets. The user will have the opportunity to stream media content over a communication work to their device. These trigger points will be offered to the player while they stream media, watching back through gameplay, which they'll be able to select at will. The system will identify game data associated with said trigger points. Based on the game data associated with the trigger point, the system will launch the interactive title for gameplay by the user device based on the identified set of game data associated with the select trigger point. So, you know, a lot of jargon that it goes over my head, but essentially it is noting a way where you could go back and replay games starting from these specific trigger points. Now, it's not going to be something to the effect of, let's say you had like a media file on your computer and you could like rewind it to any point. No, it'll be these specific trigger points that'll allow you to go back, lending me to believe that you can't just mass implement this to every game on the market. Rather, it would have to be something that would be a case-by-case basis, and developers would have to come to the table and be like, hey, these are the trigger points that it's going to be triggered. At least that's how I am interpreting this information. I think it could be a cool little feature to be included, and something that, you know, would just be a quality of life improvement as far as going back, especially with games with missable trophies. That's not generally the case anymore. I feel like games are pretty good about not having a lot of missable trophies, in the sense that if you play through a campaign, unless it's like a trophy attached to a difficulty setting, like usually they are pretty good about allowing you going back through like the world and getting a trophy if you missed it and it's not time gated, or at least giving you a heads up that, hey, beyond this point you can't do anything else. Games have been, I feel, based on what I've played, fairly good about letting you know it. That obviously it's not you know, 100% of titles, but more often than not, I feel like games are pretty good, and first-party Sony titles, I feel like, are pretty good about that. So, another nice feature that could be implemented in the coming months, or even a year from now. Like, patents are what they are. Sometimes they're never even implemented, but it does give us an idea that Sony is, in fact, working on something like this, which I think could be a pretty cool addition. Now, moving on from that, what about the immediate future? There's been a lot of talk about 2024 and PlayStation as a whole and their catalog for 2024, which, let's be honest, at this point, we are in the home stretch of 2023. Right now is when you would expect to see that 2024 table be set and get an idea of what games are coming out. at the end of last year, we kind of all knew Spider-Man 2 was going to be the big 2023 game. There was some concern maybe it'll be delayed into 2024, but ultimately, Spider-Man 2 was the game that everybody looked at as the major 2023 title, and everybody knew that. Going into 2024, at this home stretch of 2023, do we really know what 2024 is going to consist of? Eliminate the timed exclusivity, the third-party exclusivity agreements for a second. I'm talking about first-party Sony titles. What are we going to get from them? I know a lot of people are hedging their bets on Marvel's Wolverine, and hey, Insomniac really saved PlayStation in 2023. Are they about to save PlayStation again in 2024? That may be the case, because as noted on Zubitech's Twitter account, Marvel's Wolverine is set for a 2024 release with Ben Studio new IP game set for 2025. This is coming from an ArtStation profile concept artist. Now, things like this, you have to take with a grain of salt. It's not coming from Insomniac directly, and any date that's listed here, it could have been listed with a tentative release window in mind, meaning early on, Insomniac was like, hey, we're gonna work on Wolverine, the game is in development, this is kind of our tentative target window, but things in terms of target window, we all know this, change all the time. This could just be a target window, and guys, the world just went through hell a little while ago. Development slowed down for a lot of these studios, and as great as Insomniac has been, they've never followed up a release of a major AAA game, at least in recent memory, when their games are getting so much bigger and so much more ambitious. Some of you guys are gonna go back to fall of 2020 and be like, hey, we got Miles Morales, and then June of next year, we got Ratchet and Clank. Well, Miles Morales, everybody knows, that was a smaller game. That wasn't a full-sized Insomniac experience. I really dug Miles Morales, thought it was a great game, and I think, you know, some elements of it was actually stronger than Spider-Man 2018, but Spider-Man 2 was a full-fledged AAA game, and the fact that some people are expecting Insomniac to follow that up a year later with another full-fledged AAA game, I just think, yo, that would be great, and that would just cement Insomniac's place as Sony's most valuable studio, and obviously Insomniac is a fairly large studio. They've had separate teams working on these games, but I can't imagine Wolverine is coming out next year. I would imagine it's gonna be a 2025 title, which makes a lot more sense to me. You know, a 2-year window until the release. If it's 2024, great. That would give Sony a very needed shot in the arm, because you look at their lineup. Again, there's titles like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which we'll talk about in a second. We've got Rise of the Ronin, you know, tentatively scheduled for 2024. Things like that, always in flux. Stellar Blade, if that game ever comes out. Lost Soul Aside, if some of you guys want to pretend that that game is real. I mean, I hope it's real, but like, you know, you look at that 2024 calendar, and it is a barren wasteland. It is looking like a Microsoft-level wasteland when Microsoft was having those really bad years, if you take away the third-party timed exclusives, and I really feel like a big reason for that is Sony's heavy emphasis on live service titles. I'm sure that they wanted to get Last of Us Factions out next year. I'm sure that they internally maybe expect Concord or Fair Game to be blowaway games. We'll see if that comes to fruition. You guys know how I feel about that. But when you do have this investment in live service, something's gonna take a hit. And it does seem like for Sony, it is going to be your traditional big budget single player game. I'm excited for Helldivers 2. I hope that turns out well. That's not really the big single player style Sony experience that people want, but you know, a Wolverine would be. Death Stranding 2 potentially 2024, and I'm sure they've got other stuff in the works, but generally speaking, Sony isn't one of those studios that announces a game and then quickly follows it up with a release. They did that with the announcement of the PlayStation 5. They revealed, you know, Demon's Souls, Spider-Man, Miles Morales against Spider-Man, a smaller game, but Demon's Souls Remake is certainly a big game, and they followed that up with a release right away. That's kind of with the PS5 coming out. Generally speaking, Sony's one of these publishers that they're revealing games 3, 4, 5 years before they're ready to come out. I mean, Wolverine was revealed in 2021, and we're talking about ideally a 2024 release window and potentially 2025. You know, 3 to 4 years for that, and that's generally what they kind of do, at the very least 2 years. So the idea of Sony revealing a game, a big game in 2024, and then following up with a release 6 months later, I would be all for that, and I would love Sony to do that a little bit more frequently, because I think these drawn out, let's get excited for Mass Effect coming out in 2030, like, you guys know I hate that kind of stuff, and it just seems like more and more publishers are going along with that, and not a big fan of that. But nevertheless, hopefully they can figure it out for 2024, things can come together, because I'm getting very big, like, you know, Microsoft vibes when Microsoft had those barren years of no release, and it seems like Microsoft, you know, fingers crossed, turning it around, but hopefully, you know, this live service, you know, plan, it does what it does, and then we can get back to what Sony does best, and that's their, you know, big budget single player games. And I'm all for multiplayer titles, but yeah, let's not talk about that again. Lastly, I do want to note one of the major titles that will initially be a PlayStation 5 exclusive, timed exclusive. It's a 3-month timed exclusive. You can barely even call it an exclusive at that point. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was noted that it's going to feature graphics and performance modes very similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake that also had various modes on PlayStation 5 with the upgraded release. The graphics mode is noting to deliver a 4K resolution while targeting a frame rate of 30 FPS, and then the latter performance mode, that is obviously going to go with 60 FPS, and it'll probably hit 1440p if the remake is going to be anything to go by. Do keep in mind that Rebirth is more of an expansive open world style experience, so this game I do believe is going to be a little bit more technically demanding. There were rumblings that some of these initial demos, the graphics mode did have some faltering frame rates, but at the same time, like, this is a visual delight of a game, and, you know, some people are gonna go the 4K 30 FPS route. I know almost everybody went that route with FF16. Will be interesting to see how it turns out for FF7 Rebirth. Super excited for the game. You know, I'm not a big fan of Sony's 3-month timed exclusivity gimmicks. Like, bro, you're paying, what, 7-8 figures? You're paying, not 9 figures, but probably, like, close to 8 figures for a 3-month timed exclusivity. Like, come on, man, what are we doing here? How about we get some quality first-party title, so we don't need to do this timed exclusivity nonsense. You know, get it on Xbox, get it on Switch too, get it on PC, but you guys know I'm a broken record as far as that's concerned. But that'll do it for me. Again, it looks like PlayStation might be prepping up a major feature according to this new patent as far as replaying a game from any point with these trigger points. We'll see how that turns out. Marvel's Wolverine, I would take that 2024 rumored window with a big grain of salt. Look, you guys know that I'm always a little bit skeptical when it comes to these things. I'm more pessimistic, so I don't get disappointed when it comes to these things. If they hit 2024, man, just, you know, stamp it down. Insomniac is the GOAT as far as Sony first party goes, but yeah, it's just pretty hard to believe. I think it's more likely we get Spider-Man 2 DLC than we get Wolverine next year, but we'll see how that turns out. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will be featuring both graphics and performance modes, and do expect this to be one of, you know, 2024's early contenders for Game of the Year. It's shaping up to be quite nice. We'll see how the story goes, because I know that is a big concern for a lot of people. I'm excited about that. Either, I've always said, it's gonna be amazing or it's gonna be a colossal train wreck. Either way, we're gonna be greatly entertained as far as that's concerned. That'll do it for me. Sound off all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.